What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 37 of the Elephant Wire Podcast, the show we break down song lyrics and don't play you a damn second of the song because major labels are thieving babies that would sue us up the ass. This week's episode, we are going to be dissecting the song Always Gold by Radical Face. Let's get some.
Welcome to the Elephant Wire Podcast. Music, drugs, laughter, lyrics.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Elephant Wire Podcast. I am excited to be here and start going through these lyrics. This has been a... there we go. Let's get it out of the way early, right? This has been a favorite song of mine for a very long time now. I've been a big Radical Face fan. Singer-songwriter from Jacksonville, Florida. He's a solid dude by the name of Ben Cooper, I believe. No, I don't believe that. That's actually his name, Ben Cooper. He had a very interesting story coming up, but we have so much to delve into lyrics-wise. I hate to do this, but just for the sake of time, we are going to get into some of his upbringing. We got some quotes here. We got like an NPR interview and a couple other things like that. But we are going to spend the majority of the episode today on the actual lyrics of this song because there is a lot to go through. So why don't we just dive into it? Ben Cooper goes by the name Radical Face. He's a singer-songwriter, kind of folky, kind of rock at times, more acoustic mostly. He chose the name Radical Face, which is an awesome band name, by the way, especially if you're just a singer-songwriter doing some folk music. Radical Face. He saw it on a flyer. Out walking around one day, sees Radical Face on a flyer, and he's like, oh, that'd make a good band name. So he went with it. He finds out later that it was actually a flyer for plastic surgery, and it actually said Radical Face Lift. But some, punk kids or, some Karen ripped the word lift off of it. And by the time he got to it, he never even knew. So that's how he ended up with a band name Radical Face. How about that, huh? That's a fun one. But he was doing an interview with NPR, and they were just kind of covering almost everything in his career. But at the same time, they were kind of narrowing it down to a series of albums that he released called Family Tree, and the series of albums that he did called Family Tree, where we'll get into all of them. There was Roots, there was Branches, there was I think one of them was Leaves, and then he also did one called Bastards, and it's about a fictional family and just all the things that family has gone through and all the things they've dealt with, and it was really a way for him to kind of therapeutically like sort out his childhood in a way. And kind of, he talks at times about trying to write music that's not autobiographical, to try to separate himself from the music that he's actually writing and separate himself from the intimacy of the music that he's writing. And, when you're writing albums about family, to make them not about your specific upbringing is difficult. But so in the last album in the series of Family Tree is an album called The Leaves. So all those albums are called Family Tree, and then semicolon The Leaves or The Branches or The Bastards or of that nature. So in the last album, he could not help himself but get a little autobiographical in that sense. And I have a quote here by him, and he's talking about growing up in Jacksonville, Florida. He says, I think I was kind of the oddball. He came out to his family when he was 14, which for all accounts and purposes nowadays is not necessarily a very young age for someone to come out. It really isn't. but even a short 10 years ago, much less when Ben was at the age of 14, much less in Jacksonville, Florida at that time. I mean, this was a young age for him to come out and just to say, here I am. This is who I am. I'm not ashamed of it. This is the person that I am. He says it didn't go well. He says, I got kicked out, and no one in my family talked to me for at least 3 years. Now, he's actually the oldest he's the third in line. He's one of 9 children, so I think he has 2 older sisters, and then it's him. So there's a lot of people in his family. So the fact that not a single one of them talked to him for 3 years, that's big. That's really big. And he talks about it was a very difficult time for him, especially as he was kind of coming into his knowledge of being a musician. At 14 years old, you're just starting to figure out kind of what your interests might be. Maybe. 14 years old, like you're in middle school. You haven't even hit high school yet. I mean, you're on the later end of middle school probably. You're probably in 8th grade. I'm sure there's a couple brainiac nerds out there that were 14-year-old freshmen, but more often than not, you're just coming out of middle school. You're starting to figure out maybe, what you're into and what's exciting to you and what things are interesting. And this also, it also fits the timeline of that's the age that he came out. That was when he finally was like, oh my God, this is who I am. And he'd obviously battled with it internally for a period of time before that. But he was also doing another interview with For Folk's Sake, which is a great name for a website. Good job on their part. But he says it's a funny thing. For a long time, I had a lot of trouble with autobiographical music. Writing about myself, I found I really didn't have any sympathy, which is interesting to think of it in that way. When he writes biographically, even if it's fiction based, when he writes biographically, he has this ability to have compassion for this either this real person or this fictitious person that he's writing about. However, when he writes autobiographically, he's very unsympathetic, and it's interesting that he even knows this correlation. He's found this in himself. So he continues on. He says, I came up with a trick. If I removed all the details in the pieces that boil down to people's experiences and put that experience into a character vehicle or vessel, then I could approach it with sympathy. Now, talk about a life hack. This guy figured out how he could accomplish the goal that he had originally set out to do, while actually getting all of those internalization, all that internal emotion, he could actually get it out and go about it the way that he originally wanted to. And he continues on with his quote here. He says, I think it happens to a lot of people that if I think about my issues, there are some things that my friends will tell me that the same thing, and I will feel terrible. Just separating myself will allow me to talk about it from the outside. So just imagine, you slam your finger in a car door one morning, and you say to if I slam my finger in the car door, I'm going to say, God damn it, Jake, you fucking asshole. I'm going to be mad at myself that I even let that happen. 2 hours later, we get to a restaurant. My wife goes to close the car door, and she slams her finger. I'm going to be like, oh my God, are you okay? That's exactly what he's talking about here, except he's talking about things like, getting kicked out of your family's home and, dealing with being in such a giant family and there's no food on the table. Because that's another thing. I haven't even mentioned it yet, but he did not grow up with a whole bunch of money. He mentions it a couple times in a couple different interviews that I've seen. He wasn't below the poverty line, but they walked that line like it was a goddamn tightrope. He didn't grow up in a house that they didn't have a whole bunch going for him, especially with that many kids. He says that for the majority of his life, he grew up in a 2-room house. His parents had a 2-bedroom house. So his parents had a bedroom, and then all the kids had the other bedroom. That's a lot of people to cram into one spot. So, it might have been kind of nice when he got kicked out at 14. He could breathe a little bit, stretch out. Get the elbows out there a little bit. But just to finish this quote by him, he says, just separating myself allowed me to talk about it from the outside. I knew I was talking about people I know and was related to. and I was getting it off my chest, and I was speaking directly to another person, which is something that he hadn't had the ability to do for a long time. He hadn't been able to process it. So all he did was he had to pull the whole, let's call them so-and-so. You know, their name is Kyle, but for the sake of this story, let's call them Jeff. And now just that little bit of separation, now he was able, now the floodgates were open and he could just go. He could absolutely just go. And I think that speaks volumes about even the song that we're talking about today, because whether he's talking from a third person point of view, whether he's talking from an autobiographical, biographical, whatever it is, the song that we're actually talking about today is a very, very, very interesting story that we're going to be going through. But like I said, I mean, this album that our song comes off of today is The Roots. This was the first in the trilogy that came out, because one of the albums in the Family series that came out. So the Roots came out in 2011. In 2013, The Branches came out. In 2016, The Leaves was the last of the trilogy of the Family albums that came out. However, just sneaking in between there in 2015 was an album he released called The Bastards. And a quote that he has about that album is that those were some songs that they really didn't have a place, and they really didn't feel home to him, and that's why he named them so aptly so, The Family, The Bastards, because he's always felt that he was that for his family. Case in point, I mean, he was kicked out at 14 by his stepdad. I mean, what's a bigger kick in the teeth than that? That's a rough way to get going in adulthood. And just to initiate it that young. But our song today, Always Gold. It is track 10 of 11, and it comes in at 5 minutes, 52 seconds. It is a fantastic jam. I think one of my favorite things about Radical Face is he doesn't actually use a lot of percussion in the traditional sense. He does a lot of hand clapping, a lot of foot stomping, a lot of noises like that. Like one way that I would like to describe would be like front porch percussion. Is a great way to describe it. The Lumineers are another band that are incredible at this. Multiple bands that I could think of right now, especially in the folk genre, where instead of using a drum kit or even some amount of modulation or MIDI or any other parameter, clapping your hands, slapping your thighs, stomping your feet. That's the percussion that Ben Cooper's going with his project Radical Face. Another one of my favorite things about this song is the way that all the background noises are there. Everything is there. You hear him. The song starts with just some low, it's not necessarily humming, but some harmonized, maybe some oohs, ooh. And it's very slow, and it's very subtle, and it's very sweet, with some piano going. And then you hear him go sit down, pick up his guitar, and start playing. And it's absolutely phenomenal. So I tell you what, let's start getting into these lyrics, because we got a whole bunch of shit to dive into. So let's do this. Here we go. Tight-knit boys, brothers in more than name. You would kill for me and knew that I'd do the same. And it cut me sharp to hear that you'd gone away. But everything goes away. Yeah, everything goes away. But I'm gonna be here till I'm nothing but bones in the ground. And I was there when you grew restless and left in the dead of night. And I was there when 3 months later you were standing in the door all beaten and tired. And I stepped aside. Everything goes away. Yeah, everything goes away. But I'm gonna be here till I'm nothing but bones in the ground. So quiet down. We were opposites at birth. I was steady as a hammer. And no one worried, 'cause they knew just where I'd be. And they said you were the crooked kind, and that you'd never have no worth. But you were always gold to me. Back when we were kids, we swore we knew the future, and how our words would take us halfway around the world. But I never left this town, and you never saw New York, and we ain't never crossed the sea. But I'm fine with where I am now. This home is home, and all that I need. But for you, this place is shame. But you can blame me when there's no one left to blame. I don't mind. All my life, I've never known where you've been. There were holes in you, the kind that I could not mend. And I heard you say right when you left that day, does everything go away? Yeah, everything goes away. But I'm gonna be here till forever. So just call when you're around. Well, there we go. This is quite a story we got to start delving through here. I mean, like I said, I mean, like it's difficult for us. I mean, we know that the family tree trilogy that he released is, like he said, he separates himself from the not the validity. Obviously, the story is valid. But he separates himself from the actual characters and the actual events and all those things. That way he's able to actually dive through them. So, is this song a true story? Who's to say? Did these events take place? Honestly, probably most likely. Was he part of them? See, this is where we get into the semantics of it. This is where we start to pick and choose and try to figure out. That's not why we're here. We're not here to figure out whether or not Ben Cooper watched his brother leave one day. That's not why we're here. What we're here to do is dive through this story. So we're going to have two characters right now. We're going to have the narrator, which very well might be Ben Cooper. We don't know. We have the narrator, and then we have the narrator's brother. And those are the two characters as we start going through this. Because the very first line, we were tight-knit boys, brothers in more than name. I mean, they were related. And the fact that he says brothers in more than name, they were not just related. I mean, I have two brothers. And we are brothers. I mean, that's just how it works. We came out of the same mom. We have the same dad. We're brothers. But there were times when we were growing up where we were inseparable. You know, as we've grown older and we've gone, you know, I got one brother this direction, I got one brother the other direction. We're all out living our lives and being adults. And when we see each other, it's like 4 minutes went by and we're just right back at it, just shooting the shit. That's what he's talking about here. We're tight-knit boys, brothers in more than name. And you would kill for me and knew that I'd do the same. They had each other's backs. They knew exactly, they didn't even question. If they needed anything, boom, got you. And that's why this next line he says, and it cut me sharp hearing you'd gone away. But everything goes away. Yeah, everything goes away. So at some point in the story that we have here, the narrator relays to us that the brother has decided to either completely remove himself physically from a location. And as we're going through these lyrics, that is actually what it sounds like. It sounds like the brother left the location, whether, you know, the hometown or the homestead or the home that they grew up in. And it cut me sharp hearing you'd gone away. But instantly the narrator understands everything goes away. You know, I saw a quote the other day that someone was saying, you know, it's kind of fucked up when you think about it, that there was a last time you went outside to play with your friends. And it's like I said, it's pretty fucked up to think about that. And whenever I saw the quote, I started thinking about it, about when that may have been. Because, you know, whenever I was growing up, my family moved a few times. You know, we lived a few different places. And I was thinking about, like, I can actually nail down a few of those. The last time that I played with a friend, like whether it was, you know, before we moved here. So, you know, oh, we're getting ready to move. My parents are packing up, so I'm in the backyard playing with that neighbor. That was the last time I ever saw that kid. Or the last time I saw that kid. Everything goes away. And then he even reinforces it. Yeah, everything goes away. But he does follow it up by saying, but I'm going to be here till I'm nothing but bones in the ground. He knows he's not going anywhere. You know, he wants to be that rock. He wants to be that solid base, that foundation, because he understands how much that could mean to his brother. You know, as the narrator says that, I'm going to be here till I'm bones in the ground. This isn't even for him. This might not even be out of this might not even be out of, whether it's laziness or scared to go anywhere. It almost sounds like he's saying it because he knows he needs to. Because as he keeps going, I was there when you grew restless. He watched things change in his brother. He watched things change in this family member, where whether his brother was not fulfilled, whether his brother began to make decisions, whether it be drugs or alcohol or whatever the decision making was. He watched this family member become restless. It even says he left in the dead of night. He remembers the time whenever let's say that this is, maybe it is this fictitious story, but it is a situation where like Ben Cooper grew up. He grew up there were 9 of them, or no, he had 9 siblings. That's what it was. He had 9 siblings. So he's one of 10 children. They're all. How are you going to sneak out of a house with 12 people sleeping in it? I've done that before at a party. Everyone crashes out and you're stepping over bodies to get out of there so you can just go get some Gatorade or something at 4 o'clock in the morning. We've been there. But in a home that you grew up in, left in the dead of night, people knew he was leaving. They throw an eye. They heard him go. And then that very next line, and I was there when 3 months later you were standing in the door all beat and tired. So he left, but he came right back because he didn't know where else to go. So he went home. And that's when the narrator says, and I stepped aside. Because there's 2 options there. You can stand in the doorway and you can say, well, you left. You made your own bed. Go lay in it. I don't know why you came back here. Or you can say, welcome home. Those are the 2 options. And he says there, I'm going to be here till I'm nothing till I'm bones in the ground. He's already let us know that that's the case. He let us know how much it hurt him to know that they left. But whenever he follows it up, he says, I stepped aside. Come on back in. Come on. Get in here. Let's get you cleaned up. And right after that, he says, everything goes away. Yeah, everything goes away. But I'm going to be here till I'm nothing but bones in the ground. And then this time, it's a little different because he follows it right up with, so quiet down. This time it's tough love. This time it's, all right, I got your back, but sit down because we got some shit we got to sort through some things, all right? It's about to be some tough love. There's about to be some finger waving here. And he says, we were opposites at birth. I was steady as a hammer. No one worried because they knew just where I'd be. So he just gets the obvious out of the way. Look, when we were born, our entire upbringing, we were growing up as boys, we both knew that we were opposite. And everyone around us knew that we were opposites. I was steady as a hammer. No one worried because they knew just where I'd be. He followed the rules. He did what was asked of him. He said please, said thank you. And then he points right back at his brother and he said, and they said you were the crooked kind and that you'd never have no worth. He's reminding his brother, you remember what these people said about you? You remember what they said? Remember they said you were the crooked kind? You weren't worth shit? And he does get in there, and he with that tough love is also, a little bit of the vinegar, a little bit of the honey, that kind of, little bit of this, a little bit of that. He says, but you were always gold to me. He's reminding his brother, why did you have to, not only why did you have to prove them right? Why did you have to prove, not only is he saying that, but why did you have to go and do that when you know how I feel about you? When you know that I have your back? I got you, man. You were always gold to me. They said you have no worth, so why'd you go be worthless? You were always gold to me. And then he kind of tries to level the playing field here a little bit. He says, back when we were kids, we swore we knew the future, and our words would take us halfway around the world. He's reminding his brother of like those simpler times, the innocence of growing up. But then he brings it right back down to the ground again when he says, but I never left this town, and you never saw New York, and we never crossed the sea. Look, when we were kids and we were younger, and we had all these big, big dreams, and all these things that we were going to do. We haven't done those things, have we? We didn't do those. And he's almost coming to terms with it and almost trying to get, the narrator's trying to get his brother to realize it's okay. It's okay that we haven't done those things. Because the very next words out of his mouth are, I am fine with where I am now. This home is home and all that I need. He's like, look, we talked about that we were going to travel and we were going to go see things and we were going to go do things and all the places we were going to cross the ocean and it was going to be dope and it was going to be sick and we were going to see all this shit. And we didn't do it, did we? And that's fine. It's okay. I mean, I've talked multiple times on this podcast that in this day and age, I think so many times people get into that Gary V mindset where unless you're accomplishing something every fucking second of the day, you're a failure. That is not the case. You're allowed to throw a day away every now and again. You're allowed to spend an entire weekend on your fucking couch plowing through Doritos. It's okay. You're allowed to do that. If that's how you wanted to spend your time, fucking get some. If you want to watch 14 seasons of Gilmore Girls in one swoop, fucking do it. Why not? This home is home and all that I need. You don't need someone else to tell you how you need to be fulfilled. And then he goes into it and he kind of levels with his brother a little bit more. He says, but for you, this place is shame. The way you left, the terms you left on, the way you went about leaving. I mean, these are the things that he's referencing. He says, but for you, this place is shame. Maybe it's the reason he left to begin with. Maybe it's earlier whenever he says, whenever it cut me sharp hearing that you'd gone away. Maybe he's not saying gone away. Maybe he's saying gone that way. Maybe it's a play on words almost, that he's kind of referencing that, the direction that his brother was going before he left. He says, but for you, this place is shame. But then this is where the narrator really cements in there once again. You know, when he talks earlier, for you were always gold to me, this is where the I'd kill for you and you'd do the same. Obviously, that's just jargon. You know, that's ride or die. That kind of shit. This is where he can actually, the rubber can legitimately meet the road and he can back up the words that he's been saying. Because he says, but you can blame me when there's no one left to blame. I don't mind. That is some real shit. That is honestly some of the most family brotherly love that you can bestow. Honestly. If you've literally run out of options and people to blame, you can blame me. I don't mind. I'm content. And my conscience is clear. I know how you ended up here. That's the whole reason I got you sitting in this chair. You came back 3 months later. Sit down. Be quiet. We got to talk. And he goes all the way through that and he says, you can blame me when there's no one left to blame. I don't mind. And then we have the outro of the song. And he says, all my life, I've never known where you've been. Now that seems a lot less location. That seems a lot more as far as mindset, headspace, his heart, his emotions, his feelings, his desires. All my life, I've never known where you've been. There were holes in you, the kind that I could not mend. Now, the way that he says that, the kind I could not mend, it shows that he has tried at times. It shows that there was effort there. He tried to mend them. He couldn't. Because the only way he could know he couldn't mend them is if he had attempted at some point. And the next line's here, and I heard you say, right when you left that day, does everything go away? And then he just cements it once again. Yeah, everything goes away. You know, once again, that thought process of, you know, the last time you went out to play with your friends or the last time you visited a place and you had no idea. Everything goes away. That's just how this life works. Everything dies. Everything goes away. Everything comes to an end. In the last line of that song, but I'm going to be here till forever. so just call when you're around. He doesn't make his brother stay. He doesn't make his brother promise that he won't go anywhere, and he doesn't make his brother even tell him where he's going, because he knows he's not going to stick around. But he says, just call when you're around. I just want to know you're good. I'll be here. You show up at the door, I will step aside, and I will let you in. And like I said before we even went through this, there's a lot to unpack here, and we could probably spend another hour and a half just going over these lyrics. But this song has always been so beautiful to me because, as you get older, and as your interests change, and as your desires change, and maybe even your location changes, you lose friends, you gain friends, family, especially in the last few years. I mean, people have had a lot of difficulty in maybe reasoning with family more than they used to be able to. And this is a beautifully powerful message to remember of how much love actually makes a difference, and what love can actually do, and how much love can actually change things. Because when you're coming at a situation with a loving mindset and from a loving standpoint, this is where you end up, being able to make those statements. Just call when you're around. You don't make statements like, get the fuck out of my life. You don't stand in the doorway and say, you made your own decision, go live with it. You step aside. You say, call when you're around. You see that there are holes in someone, and you try to mend them, whether you can or can't. I've loved this song for a very long time because of that, because it reminds me to act from a place of love, to not act out of a place of anger, to not act out of a place of whether it be jealousy or any of the other ridiculous emotions that as human beings we fight with constantly. It's a great jam. And honestly, the whole trilogy of the family tree that Radical Face has done, fantastic. Give it a listen. Listen to it from front to back. And obviously do it in reverse chronological order. So listen to this album first, The Roots, and then listen to The Branches, and then listen to The Leaves. And then at the very end, listen to Bastards. But great, absolutely fantastic song. Radical Face, Ben Cooper, good times. But here we go. It's now time for the local band spotlight. And this week we got Lindsey Daniel from Austin, Texas. What up, Austin, Texas? That town is a riot, by the way. If you haven't been to Austin, Texas, go there. I can't vouch for literally anywhere else in Texas. I've been to Fort Worth's airport. That's about it. Well, I take that back. Houston's a pretty good time. I got to say, Houston is honestly a pretty good time. I do have to say that. If I ate barbecue, it'd probably be even more fun. But Austin, Texas, what a spot. Lindsey Daniel, Austin, Texas-based indie pop artist, released her debut EP in 2019 and is currently working on writing and recording her first self-produced album. Lindsey draws songwriting influences from varied genres such as pop, folk, EDM, pop punk, and jazz. With her powerful vocals, emotive lyrics, and unique style, Lindsey Daniel is one up-and-coming artist you won't want to miss. I agree with that, actually. She has released an album not terribly long ago, like it says there, in her debut EP in 2019. We will be posting one of her songs on our local Bands That Don't Suck playlist. This album that she released, her EP called 20 something, it's a fantastic little EP. I was very impressed whenever she sent it over. I believe we will be what was the name of the song we were put? End of This Way. That's what it's called. End of This Way will be the song we are adding to the local Bands That Don't Suck playlist. Give her a follow, give her a shout out, give her a listen, follow her on Spotify and Instagram and all the other spots. Fantastic young lady, making some rad tunes. I'm very much into it. Support local music, friends. Support local music, and just get out there and mix it up with the kids, and just, go spray paint the walls of your local venue, or I don't know. been saying it and saying it and saying it. Just get out there and you know what you need to do. Do the right thing. And if you like what we do here at the Elephant Wire Podcast, you can support us too by going to anchor.fm/the Elephant Wire Podcast. And you can support us monthly there. You can also go to our website, theelephantwire.com. We got some merch, stickers, t-shirts, blah, 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 blah. You can give us a gift. Follow us on Instagram. Honestly, the best way that you can support us is literally just be like, hey, oh, you're into music. I got this lyrics podcast. It's pretty niche, but I think you might like it. And tell a friend. That's literally the best way that you can support this podcast at this juncture. Honestly, money's cool. We're just going to spend it on drugs. So, take that into account. Don't take that into account. Whatever you want to do. But thank you so much for listening this week. This was a fun episode. I know it was a little more somber than what we usually get into, but that's kind of the thing. It can't all be fun and games. Everything goes away. Radical Face, Always Gold, Lindsey Daniel and her song End This Way. I think that's all we got, friends. Fuck the man. Hail Satan. Hug your mom. We'll catch you next week. Peace.